Welcome to the National Environmental Policy Act, also known as NEPA introductory course titled Aquatic Preserves and Outstanding Florida Waters, provided by the Florida Department of Transportation's or FDOT's Office of Environmental Management or OEM. This training is a part of a series of introductory courses that provide guidance on FDOT's process for complying with NEPA, called Project Development and Environment or PD&E. Please see the Environmental Management Academy course catalog in the FDOT Learning Curve or the OEM website PD&E training track for other trainings in this series. Please note, links to all references mentioned in this training will be provided on the last slide. The purpose of this course is to provide instruction on analysis, coordination, and documentation of project impacts to waters designated as aquatic preserves and outstanding Florida waters. Please note, you may pause this training at any time. This course contains 6 lessons. In Lesson 1, we will cover the basics on aquatic preserves and outstanding Florida waters. Lesson 2 will discuss the process of determining involvement with aquatic preserves and outstanding Florida waters. Lesson 3 will discuss coordination for projects that may impact aquatic preserves. Lesson 4 will cover documentation in the environmental document. Lesson 5 will cover permitting for projects involving aquatic preserves or outstanding Florida waters. And Lesson 6 will discuss Section 4F applicability. Throughout this training, you're going to see these 2 icons here at the bottom of the slide. The AP icon is shown when the discussion is about aquatic preserves. The OFW icon is shown when the discussion is about outstanding Florida waters. And sometimes the guidance is combined for the 2, so both icons will be shown. Let's begin with Lesson 1. What are aquatic preserves and outstanding Florida waters? The Aquatic Preserves and Outstanding Florida Waters process is guided by Part 2, Chapter 11 of the Project Development and Environment, or PD&E Manual. In addition to covering other water resources, this chapter provides an overview of aquatic preserves and outstanding Florida waters and explains the procedure for conducting coordination to determine project impacts and how to document them in the environmental document. You may want to have this chapter handy as you go through this training. This training is available on FDOT's Office of Environmental Management or OEM's website using the link at the bottom of this slide. This link can also connect you to other chapters of the PD&E Manual that are referenced throughout this training. Let's start with waters designated as outstanding Florida waters. An outstanding Florida water, or OFW, is a designated water body worthy of special protection because of its natural attributes. This special designation is applied to certain waters and is intended to protect existing good water quality. Section 403.06127 of the Florida Statutes, or FS, enables the Florida Department of Environmental Protection, or FDEP, to establish a special category of water bodies to be designated as outstanding Florida waters. These outstanding Florida waters are frequently open water areas that are managed by the state or federal government as parks, and they are listed in Chapter 62-302.709 of the Florida Administrative Code, or FAC. They include waters within parks, wildlife refuges, recreation areas, and others listed here. Generally, the waters within these managed areas are OFWs because of the managing agency has requested that they have this special protection. Aquatic preserves, along with other designated water bodies, are generally considered OFWs. However, not all OFWs are aquatic preserves. In 1975, Florida enacted the Aquatic Preserve Act. And this ensured that aquatic preserves' natural condition, their aesthetic, biological, and scientific values, may endure for the enjoyment of future generations. An aquatic preserve is defined in this act and in section 258.37 FS has an exceptional area of submerged lands and its associated waters set aside for being maintained essential in its natural or existing condition. Today, there are 42 aquatic preserves in Florida. All but 4 of these submerged lands of exceptional beauty are located along Florida's 8,400 miles of coastline in the shallow waters of marshes and estuaries. Many aquatic preserves are associated with public lands, such as state or federal parks or refuges. Now that we know what these designations mean, let's begin Lesson 2, where we'll discuss the process for determining project involvement with aquatic preserves and outstanding Florida waters. It's the responsibility of the FDOT district to determine project involvement with aquatic preserves and outstanding Florida waters. The district may refer to lists along with project location maps to determine if the project may involve one or more of these designated water bodies. Areas in the state designated as aquatic preserves are listed in Chapter 258 FS. Areas that are designated as OFWs are listed in Rule 62-302.700 FAC. The list of aquatic preserves and a link to the list of OFWs can be found in Part 2, Chapter 11 of the PD&E Manual. The Efficient Transportation Decision-Making, or ETDM process, is also used to determine project involvement with these designated water bodies. For projects that qualify, the ETDM process provides agencies and other stakeholders the opportunity for early input and consideration of the environment in transportation planning. This is accomplished through the use of an online environmental screening tool, or EST. Further information regarding the ETDM process and the EST can be found in the ETDM Manual. If a project was screened in the EST, the Special Designations section of the Programming Screen Summary Report may include applicable comments from an FDEP Environmental Technical Advisory Team, or ETAT member. Here is a sample from an actual Programming Screen Summary Report. For this project, FDEP comments identify potential impacts to a designated aquatic preserve and outstanding Florida water. They also recommend evaluation of stormwater treatment adequacy and suggest ways to reduce impacts to water quality. Other sections, such as the wetlands and surface waters or water resources sections of the Programming Screen Summary Report, can also be a valuable resource. For this project, FDEP commented on the wetlands section, identifying potential impacts to an aquatic preserve and outstanding Florida water. They state that the project will require an environmental resource permit and mentions that the FDOT will be required to eliminate or reduce the proposed wetland resource impacts to the greatest extent practicable and provide further recommendations on minimizing impacts. As you can see, these comments can be used as a starting point when preparing the PD&E study. The EST also includes GIS data and maps that can be used to identify the proximity of the project to any aquatic preserves or outstanding Florida waters. For projects that do not qualify for EST screening, the Area of Interest tool in the EST can be used to review aquatic preserves and outstanding Florida waters GIS data layers. We'll now proceed to Lesson 3, which covers coordination that's required if a project may impact an aquatic preserve. Please note, this coordination is only required for aquatic preserves, not for outstanding Florida waters that are not also designated as aquatic preserves. As was discussed in the first lesson, the district reviews the information in the Programming Screen Summary Report or GIS data layers in the EST. Then the district uses this information to determine if the project is in, over, or adjacent to an aquatic preserve and whether there are potential impacts. For example, if there is in-water work or issues with sovereign submerged lands, or if there are potential impacts coordination with FDEP is required. Based on the results of this review and coordination with FDEP, the district then makes a determination of impact to aquatic preserves. To initiate coordination, once right-of-way requirements have been defined, the district should submit aerial maps to the FDEP Office of Resilience and Coastal Protection for review and comment. Aerials should depict alternatives and right-of-way located within the boundary of an aquatic preserve. This information should be sent with a letter requesting a response in 30 days. The standard NEPA assignment statement must be included in the letter for federal projects. The mailing address is provided in Part 2, Chapter 11 of the PD&E Manual. From here, we'll proceed to Lesson 4 to discuss documentation. The environmental document should summarize involvement with or impacts to aquatic preserves or outstanding Florida waters. For all types of environmental documents, coordination letters with FDEP are saved in the project file in the statewide environmental project tracker called SWEPT. It's recommended that they be placed in the aquatic preserves and outstanding Florida waters folder within SWEPT. Projects that were not in, over, or adjacent to an aquatic preserve or outstanding Florida water are considered to have no involvement. Now, this is documented differently depending on the type of environmental document being prepared for the project. If the project is a Type 1 categorical exclusion, or CE, or a non-major state action called an NMSA, no documentation is needed. For a Type 2 categorical exclusion, referred to as a Type 2 CE, select Not Present in the Aquatic Preserve and Outstanding Florida Waters section of the Type 2 CE determination form. The standard statement shown in purple are shown in the Type 2 CE document. For a State Environmental Impact Report, or SEER, aquatic preserves and outstanding Florida waters are combined into one section. Select Not Present, and the standard statement is included in the document. For an environmental assessment, referred to as an EA, or an environmental impact statement, referred to as an EIS, simply state in the Aquatic Preserves and Outstanding Florida Waters section that the project is not in an aquatic preserve or outstanding Florida water. Now let's discuss documentation for those projects that require coordination with FDEP. For Type 1 CEs or NMSAs located in an aquatic preserve, which will have no impact on the aquatic preserve, include coordinations or other documentation in the project file. In cases where the project needs an Environmental Resource Permit or ERP, address any remaining issues during permitting. For a Type 2 CE, EA, EIS, or SEER project that's located in an aquatic preserve but will have no impacts, the standard statement shown here should be included in the environmental document. Coordination should also be discussed, including references to coordination letters in the project file in SWEPT. Documentation varies some between the environmental document types. For a Type 2 CE project, select Present and Not Impacted in the Aquatic Preserve section of the Type 2 Categorical Exclusion Determination Form. Add the name of the applicable water body in the standard statement. For a SEER, the same information selected and entered into the Aquatic Preserves and Outstanding Florida Waters section of the SEER form. FDEP coordination letters for both are included in the project file. For EAs and EISs, include the standard statement and a summary of coordination in the Aquatic Preserves and Outstanding Florida Waters section. FDEP coordination letters are placed in the appendix. Now, for projects with no impacts to an outstanding Florida water located in the project area, documentation also varies between the environmental document types. For a Type 2 CE project, select Present in the Outstanding Florida Waters section of the Type 2 CE determination form and add the name of the applicable water body in the summary with an explanation of why there are no impacts. For a SEER, select Present in the Combined Aquatic Preserves and Outstanding Florida Waters section of the SEER form, and then select whether an aquatic preserve is present. State in the summary that there is an OFW present. Add the name of the water body and explain why there are no impacts. For EAs and EISs, identify that there is an OFW in the project area in the Aquatic Preserves and Outstanding Florida Waters section. Explain that it is not impacted and include the reasoning. Now, if a project will impact an aquatic preserve or outstanding Florida water, more documentation is needed. For Type 1 CE and non-major state action projects, impacts will be addressed at the time of project permitting. For a Type 2 CE, EA, EIS, or SEER, the aquatic preserve, or OFW, is identified on a map, showing the locations of the project area that may affect the designated water body. For projects impacting an aquatic preserve, the environmental document should discuss the extent of potential impacts to the aquatic preserve, assess the impacts that the project will have on the aquatic preserve, discuss why there is no practicable alternative to locating the project outside of the aquatic preserve, identify all measures to minimize harm to the aquatic preserve, identify permits needed and appropriate permitting agencies, provide the results of coordination with appropriate agencies having jurisdiction over the aquatic preserve, and address related ETAC comments. For projects impacting an OFW, address any ETAC comments and identify potential impacts that can be evaluated prior to permitting, including potential alternative and treatment strategies. For a Type 2 CE project with impacts to an aquatic preserve, check Present and Impacted in the Aquatic Preserve section of the Type 2 CE determination form. In the summary, identify the name of the applicable water body and include the details mentioned in the previous slide. And remember to include FDEP correspondence in the appendix. For a SEER, documentation is similar in the SEER form. For EAs and EISs, discuss the impacts, coordination with FDEP, along with the other items listed in the previous slide in the Aquatic Preserves and Outstanding Florida Waters section. FDEP coordination letters should also be placed in the appendix. Now for a Type 2 CE project with impacts to an OFW, check Present in the Outstanding Florida Waters section of the Type 2 CE determination form. Details should be included in the summary box, and remember to include any supplemental information in the project file. For a SEER, documentation is similar in the SEER form. For EAs and EISs, document the impacts and coordination in the Aquatic Preserve and Outstanding Florida Waters section. Coordination letters are included in the appendix. The water quality impact evaluation, called a WICI, is documented in a water quality impact evaluation checklist. The district should identify involvement with an aquatic preserve or an OFW on this checklist. They are listed on the water quality criteria table under special designations. This form can be found on FDOT's procedural document library website, and instructions for filling it out are provided in Part 2, Chapter 11 of the PD&E Manual. Now we will proceed to Lesson 5, where we discuss permitting for projects involving aquatic preserves or outstanding Florida waters. Projects located in OFWs receive a greater level of scrutiny by the state environmental regulatory agencies during environmental resource permitting. It's important to remember that aquatic preserves are outstanding Florida waters. FDEP and water management districts generally cannot permit direct pollutant discharge to OFWs because this could lower the existing water quality, thus significantly degrading them. Pursuant to Rule 62-4.242 FAC, No permit or water quality certification will be issued for an activity that will discharge into an OFW unless it's demonstrated that the proposed activity is clearly in the public interest and either a permit for the activity has been issued or application for such permit was complete on the effective date of the OFW designation, or the existing ambient water quality within OFWs will not be lowered as a result of the proposed activity or discharge. Exceptions can be made for activities which occur on a temporary basis during construction for a period not to exceed 30 days. And this is provided that lowered water quality would not occur within a restricted mixing zone that's approved by DEP, and water quality would not be violated outside the restricted mixing zone. The FDEP may extend the 30-day limit if the activity or discharge is demonstrated to be unavoidable and best management practices and FDEP-approved technology are employed to minimize impacts. Additional information on what constitutes assurance that the project is clearly in the public interest can be found in the Florida statutes and FAC. In order to document that the project is in the public interest, the district should note whether the activities will be temporary or permanent and determine if activities will adversely affect public health, safety, or welfare, or private property. Additionally, they should evaluate whether the activities will adversely affect conservation of fish and wildlife. Some additional questions which the district should ask include, will the activities adversely affect navigation, water flow, or result in harmful erosion or shoaling? Will the activities adversely affect fishing or recreational value or marine productivity? Will the activities adversely affect or enhance significant cultural resources? What are the current conditions and relative values of functions associated with the areas to be affected? In order to meet permitting requirements, there is an emphasis on minimization and avoidance of jurisdictional areas designated as OFWs. For additional permitting information, refer to Part 1, Chapter 12 of the PD&E Manual. In Lesson 6, we'll look into Section 4F applicability to aquatic preserves and outstanding Florida waters. Section 4F of the Department of Transportation Act of 1966 governs the use of publicly owned parks, recreation areas, wildlife and waterfowl refuges, and public or private historic sites for U.S. Department of Transportation or USDOT projects. These resources are referred to as Section 4F protected properties. Section 4F regulations only apply to the USDOT and its agencies. See Part 2, Chapter 7 of the PD&E Manual and FDOT's Section 4F References and Guides website for more information on Section 4F applicability. Generally, aquatic preserves and OFWs are not protected by Section 4F, since the primary purpose, unless designated, is not for recreation or wildlife or waterfowl refuges. The district should determine if there are multiple use public land holdings within these designated water bodies. Section 4F applies to only those portions that are designated by statute or identified in the official management plan for the area and determined through coordination with the official with jurisdiction as functioning or planned for park or recreational purposes, or as wildlife and waterfowl refuges, or which are significant historic sites. OEM has the sole responsibility for determining if Section 4F applies. The Office of Environmental Management maintains a central library of training materials as well as documents and publications, including manuals, handbooks, guidelines, and agreements. Key references pertinent to this training include the Environmental Management Academy course catalog, which is in FDOT's learning curve, and is also available through the OEM PD&E training track on OEM's website. Other resources include the PD&E Manual, ETDM Manual, the FDOT Procedural Document Library, and FDOT's Section 4F Resources and Guides website.